Brazil is one of the most diverse and visually stunning countries in the world. It is home to massive rainforests, long coastlines, modern cities, and remote places that few people ever visit. In this video, you will see Brazil in true 4K quality, capturing both its famous landmarks and its lesser-known locations, from dense jungles and powerful waterfalls to quiet beaches and vibrant streets. Every scene shows a different side of the country. This journey goes beyond the typical tourist routes to uncover hidden gems that are rarely shown. You will experience real places, real landscapes, and everyday moments that define Brazil's character, whether it is nature, culture, or city life. This film is about showing Brazil as it truly is. Incredible scenes, unexpected locations, and a perspective you may not have seen before. This is Brazil in 4K. Brazil is the fifth largest country in the world, and that fact alone changes how it must be understood. Covering nearly half of South America, Brazil stretches across vast distances, multiple climate zones, and an enormous range of landscapes. Traveling through this country means moving between environments that feel completely different from one another, sometimes within the same day. Any journey through Brazil begins with recognizing its scale, because distance, diversity, and contrast define everything that follows. With a population of more than 200 million people, Brazil is home to one of the most diverse societies on the planet. Large metropolitan areas operate at an international pace, while rural regions follow routines shaped by geography, tradition, and limited access. Modern infrastructure and unfinished development often exist side by side. This is not a country that can be captured through a single image or location, and understanding that reality is essential before going deeper. Arrival into Brazil often happens through major international airports such as São Paulo, Guarulhos, or Rio de Janeiro Galeão. These hubs connect Brazil to the rest of the world and reflect its role in global trade, tourism, and culture. Inside the terminals, the environment feels familiar to international travelers. Crowded arrival halls, multiple languages on signage, and constant movement. Outside the airport, however, Brazil immediately begins to reveal its unique character. Leaving the airport, the landscape shifts quickly. Highways extend in multiple directions, carrying traffic through industrial areas, residential neighborhoods, and commercial zones. In major cities, congestion is common, and traffic patterns reflect the density of the population. Long lines of buses, cars, and motorcycles share the roads, while pedestrians move through overpasses, sidewalks, and informal crossings. These scenes represent daily life for millions of people. As the camera moves farther from city centers, the built environment begins to thin. High-rise buildings give way to lower structures, open land, and stretches of greenery. This transition happens quickly in many parts of Brazil, highlighting how closely urban and natural environments exist together. In some areas, forested hills rise behind residential neighborhoods. In others, Rivers run directly alongside highways and housing developments. Brazil's geography plays a defining role in shaping its cities and communities. Coastal regions are heavily populated and economically active, while interior areas often depend on agriculture, mining, or local trade. Mountains, plateaus, wetlands, and forests create natural boundaries that influence transportation routes and settlement patterns. Roads often follow rivers, valleys, or coastal lines, revealing how development adapts to the land rather than fully reshaping it. The diversity of Brazil's landscapes becomes more apparent as travel continues inland. Vast agricultural fields stretch toward the horizon, especially in central and southern regions. Brazil is one of the world's largest producers of agricultural goods, and farming shapes both the economy and the environment. Soybean fields, sugarcane plantations, cattle ranches, and corn crops dominate large areas of land. These landscapes are highly organized and contrast sharply with the dense forests found elsewhere in the country. Agricultural regions operate on a different rhythm than cities. Long distances, separate towns, and daily life often revolves around seasonal cycles and weather conditions. Machinery, storage facilities, and transport trucks are common sights along rural highways. These areas are essential to Brazil's global economic role, even though they are rarely featured in travel media. Rivers are another constant presence across Brazil. The country contains some of the largest and most complex river systems in the world. In many regions, rivers serve as transportation routes, water sources, and centers of community life. Boats replace cars in areas where roads are limited or non-existent. Rivers connect remote villages to larger towns and allow goods and people to move across vast distances. The scale of Brazil's rivers is best understood from above. Wide aerial shots reveal water systems that extend far beyond the visible frame, cutting through forests, wetlands, and farmland. Smaller settlements appear along riverbanks, often accessible only by boat. These communities depend on the river for fishing, trade, and daily movement, demonstrating how geography shapes lifestyle and opportunity. Climate varies significantly across Brazil, and this variation is visible in the landscape. Northern regions are humid and tropical, with dense vegetation and frequent rainfall. The Northeast includes areas where drought and water scarcity affect agriculture and daily life. Southern regions experience cooler temperatures and seasonal changes, with landscapes that look very different from the tropical image many people associate with Brazil. These climatic differences influence architecture, clothing, agriculture, and daily routines. Buildings are designed to manage heat, humidity, or cooler temperatures depending on the region. Crops vary based on rainfall and soil conditions. Even the pace of life changes with the environment. Understanding Brazil means recognizing that there is no single climate, no single ecosystem, and no single way of living. Brazil's population reflects centuries of migration, colonization, and cultural exchange. Indigenous peoples lived across the land long before European arrival, and their presence remains visible today, especially in rural and forested regions. Descendants of African slaves, brought during the colonial period, form a major part of the population and have deeply influenced Brazil's culture, language, and traditions. European immigrants from Portugal, Italy, Germany, and other countries shaped urban development and regional identities. More recent immigration from Asia and the Middle East adds another layer to this diversity. This mixture is visible in everyday life. Faces, accents, food, music, and customs vary widely between regions. There is no single way to look Brazilian, and no single cultural expression represents the entire country. This diversity is not confined to major cities. It exists in small towns, rural areas, and remote communities as well. Language unites the country, but also reflects its variation. Portuguese is spoken throughout Brazil, setting it apart from most of South America. However, regional accents, expressions, and vocabulary differ significantly. In some areas, indigenous languages are still actively spoken. In others, immigrant communities maintain their original languages alongside Portuguese. Communication reflects history, geography, and identity. Urban environments dominate much of Brazil's population centers. Cities are dense, active, and constantly changing. High-rise buildings stand next to older structures and informal housing. Commercial districts blend into residential neighborhoods without clear boundaries. Street life is active, with vendors, small shops, and open markets playing an important role in the local economy. Infrastructure varies widely, even within the same city. Some neighborhoods have modern transportation systems and well-maintained streets, while others face limited access to basic services. These contrasts are part of everyday life and reflect long-standing economic and social inequalities. Showing these realities without exaggeration is essential to presenting an honest view of the country. Nature remains close, even in heavily populated areas. Many cities are surrounded by forests, mountains, or water. Green spaces appear between buildings, and wildlife is often visible in parks and undeveloped areas. This proximity shapes how people interact with their environment and reinforces the constant presence of nature throughout Brazil. Transportation reflects regional differences and infrastructure limitations. Buses and cars dominate urban areas, while motorcycles are common in smaller towns. In remote regions, boats, dirt roads, and even animals remain essential for movement. Long-distance travel can take hours or days, depending on the terrain and available routes. These realities influence how communities connect with one another and with the rest of the country. Brazil's history is embedded in its landscapes. Colonial architecture appears in older city centers, while modern buildings reflect recent economic growth. Incomplete construction projects reveal challenges related to funding, planning, and development. Roads and land use patterns often follow paths established centuries ago. The present is layered over the past, creating environments that feel complex and uneven. This journey does not focus on iconic landmarks or postcard images. Instead, it begins by showing Brazil as it exists across distances and transitions. Movement is a central theme. Roads stretch toward the horizon, rivers curve through forests, and cities slowly fade into open land. These images emphasize travel itself rather than destinations. The pace remains steady and observational. There is no attempt to dramatize or romanticize what is shown. High-resolution visuals capture detail and scale, but the narration remains grounded and factual. The goal is to provide a clear foundation for what lies ahead by establishing context, geography, and reality. Brazil cannot be understood quickly. It requires time, attention, and an openness to complexity. This opening journey sets the tone by showing how vast the country is, how varied its environments are, and how deeply geography shapes daily life. What follows will move deeper into specific regions and experiences, but everything begins with understanding where you are and how far there is to go. Traveling deeper into Brazil means leaving the main highways and large cities behind and entering regions where the pace of life changes noticeably. As distance from major urban centers increases, access becomes more limited, and the environment begins to shape every aspect of daily life. Roads narrow, infrastructure becomes less consistent, and the surroundings grow quieter. These transitions are not abrupt, but gradual, unfolding over long stretches of travel. In many parts of the country, paved highways turn into secondary roads, and eventually into dirt tracks. These routes connect small towns, farms, and remote communities that rely on them as their primary link to the outside world. During dry seasons, travel can be slow but manageable. During periods of heavy rain, roads may become difficult or completely impassable. This dependence on weather highlights how closely daily life is tied to natural conditions. Small towns appear along these routes, often centered around a single main road. Buildings are low, functional, and closely spaced. Shops sell basic goods, fuel stations serve as social gathering points, and local markets provide food, sourced from nearby farms or rivers. These towns operate at a different rhythm than cities. Days start early, activity slows during the hottest hours, and evenings are quieter. People in these regions often know each other well. Social life revolves around family, work, and shared routines. Conversations happen on sidewalks, at market stalls, or outside small businesses. There is less anonymity than in large cities, and community ties are more visible. These interactions offer insight into a side of Brazil that is rarely shown but represents a significant portion of the population. As travel continues, natural landscapes begin to dominate the frame. Forests grow denser, fields stretch farther, and rivers widen. In some regions, vegetation becomes thick enough to block views beyond the road. In others, open land reveals vast distances with little visible development. These environments are not empty. They are working landscapes shaped by agriculture, fishing, and resource extraction. Brazil's forests are among the most important ecosystems on Earth. They regulate climate, support biodiversity, and provide resources for local communities. Traveling through forested regions reveals layers of vegetation, from tall canopy trees to dense undergrowth. The soundscape changes as well, with insects, birds, and wind replacing the noise of traffic and machinery. In areas near rivers, water becomes the defining feature. Boats replace cars, docks replace roads, and movement follows the flow of the river. Communities are built along riverbanks, with houses elevated to manage seasonal flooding. Daily routines revolve around water levels, fishing conditions, and transport schedules. These regions operate according to natural cycles that have remained largely unchanged for generations. Fishing plays a major role in many river communities. Small boats leave early in the morning and return later with the day's catch. Fish are sold locally or transported to nearby towns. This work is physically demanding and dependent on environmental conditions. Changes in water quality, weather patterns, and river flow directly affect livelihoods. Agriculture continues to shape much of the interior landscape. In some areas, large-scale farming dominates, with industrial equipment and extensive land use. In others, small family farms rely on manual labor and traditional methods. Crops vary by region, reflecting differences in soil, climate, and access to markets. These agricultural systems feed both domestic and international markets, linking remote areas to global supply chains. Life in these regions often requires adaptability. Limited access to healthcare, education, and services presents challenges that urban residents rarely face. Travel to larger towns may take hours or days. Supplies must be planned carefully. Despite these difficulties, communities develop strong systems of mutual support and local knowledge. Cultural traditions remain strong in many remote areas. Music, food, and celebrations reflect regional identities shaped by history and geography. Festivals often mark agricultural cycles, religious events, or local history. These gatherings bring communities together and provide a sense of continuity in places where change happens slowly. Food is closely tied to the land and water. Meals are often prepared using local ingredients, and recipes are passed down through generations. Fish, grains, fruits, and root vegetables form the basis of many regional diets. Cooking methods vary, but simplicity and practicality are common themes. Food reflects both necessity and tradition. As travel continues through these regions, the sense of distance becomes more pronounced. Fuel stations are fewer, mobile signal may disappear, and services become sparse. These conditions require planning and patience. Travel times are unpredictable, and progress is measured in kilometers rather than minutes. The environment imposes limits that cannot be ignored. Rivers flood, roads wash out, and weather shifts quickly. These realities shape how people build homes, plan routes, and organize daily life. Adaptation is not optional. It is essential for survival and stability. Despite the challenges, these regions offer perspectives that are difficult to find elsewhere. Silence, space, and scale create an environment where time feels different. Movement slows, observation increases, and details become more noticeable. This change in pace alters how places are experienced and understood. The visual language shifts as well. Wide shots emphasize distance and isolation, while closer shots reveal texture and detail. Faces show signs of work shaped by the environment. Hands carry evidence of daily labor. Buildings reflect practical design rather than aesthetic trends. These details communicate information without explanation. Transportation remains a constant theme. Boats navigate winding rivers, trucks carry goods across long distances, and motorcycles serve as flexible tools for movement. In some areas, animals are still used for transport and work. These methods are not outdated. They are practical responses to local conditions. The relationship between people and land is direct and visible. Resources are managed carefully, and knowledge of the environment is passed through experience rather than formal training. This understanding allows communities to survive in places that appear inhospitable to outsiders. As the journey continues, the sense of entering lesser-known spaces becomes stronger. These are not hidden in the sense of secrecy, but overlooked in broader narratives about Brazil. They exist outside the focus of tourism and global media, yet they are central to the country's identity and function. Movement through these areas reinforces the idea that Brazil is not defined by a single experience. Each region operates according to its own logic, shaped by environment, history, and access. Understanding this diversity requires attention and time, not quick stops or surface-level impressions. The visuals remain observational and grounded. There is no emphasis on spectacle, only on showing what exists. Landscapes are presented as they are, without manipulation or exaggeration. The camera moves with the journey, capturing transitions rather than isolated highlights. As daylight shifts and shadows lengthen, travel continues. Roads extend forward, rivers curve out of sight, and settlements appear and disappear. These moments emphasize continuity rather than destination. The journey itself becomes the subject, revealing Brazil through movement and change. This part of the journey builds on the foundation established earlier by moving away from central hubs and into regions shaped primarily by environment and distance. It shows how much of Brazil operates beyond the reach of major cities and how deeply geography influences daily life. What comes next will move closer to the human experience within these environments, focusing more directly on interaction, routine, and culture. as they unfold in specific places. As travel continues, attention shifts from movement across land to the people who live within these environments and shape them every day. Brazil's diversity is not only geographic, but deeply human. Daily routines, work, and social interaction reveal how different regions function and how people adapt to their surroundings. These moments provide a clearer understanding of Brazil beyond landscapes. In towns and villages, mornings often begin early. Streets gradually come to life as shops open, deliveries arrive, and people move toward work or school. Markets are central to daily life. Stalls display fruits, vegetables, fish, and grains sourced from nearby farms, rivers, or forests. Prices are negotiated, news is exchanged, and relationships are reinforced through routine interaction. Work defines much of the daily rhythm. In agricultural regions, labor starts before the heat becomes intense. Fields are prepared, crops are harvested, and equipment is maintained. In river communities, fishing schedules depend on tides, water levels, and weather. In towns, small businesses provide services that support local life, from repair shops to food stands. These activities are not performed for spectacle. They are practical responses to necessity. What is shown is not staged or curated, but part of everyday survival and stability. This grounded reality contrasts with the simplified images often associated with Brazil from afar. Homes reflect environment and resources. In warmer, humid regions, houses are designed for airflow and shade. In flood-prone areas, structures are elevated. Building materials vary depending on availability and cost, ranging from concrete and brick to wood and metal. Function takes priority over design, and homes evolve over time as needs change. Family structures play a central role across the country. Multiple generations often live close to one another, sharing responsibilities and resources. Children participate in daily routines, learning through observation and experience. Elders hold practical knowledge about land, weather, and tradition. These relationships create continuity in places where formal systems may be limited. Education access varies widely. In larger towns, schools are more developed and better resourced. In remote areas, children may travel long distances by foot, boat, or bus to attend classes. Teachers often work with limited materials, but carry significant responsibility within the community. Education is valued, even when access is challenging. Religion and belief systems are woven into daily life. Churches, temples, and informal places of worship appear in towns of all sizes. Religious events often double as social gatherings, bringing communities together. Faith provides structure, meaning, and support, particularly in regions where uncertainty is part of everyday life. Music and sound are constant elements of Brazilian culture. Radios play in homes, shops, and vehicles. Styles vary by region, reflecting local history and influence. Music accompanies work, celebration, and rest, acting as both entertainment and expression. Even in quiet places, sound carries cultural identity. Food remains one of the most visible expressions of regional difference. Ingredients are dictated by geography. Coastal regions rely heavily on fish and seafood. Inland areas emphasize grains, meat, and root vegetables. Meals are often shared, reinforcing social bonds. Cooking is practical, but deeply tied to tradition and memory. Public spaces function as gathering points. Squares, sidewalks, markets, and waterfronts provide places for conversation and observation. These spaces are used differently depending on time of day and climate. In the evenings, activity often increases as temperatures drop and work slows. Social life moves outdoors whenever possible. Transportation within towns reflects scale and need. Walking is common. Bicycles and motorcycles provide affordable mobility. In some areas, boats remain the primary form of transport. These methods are efficient responses to environment and infrastructure, not signs of underdevelopment. Access to healthcare and services remains uneven. Clinics may be distant, and specialized care often requires travel to larger cities. Communities rely on local knowledge, traditional practices, and mutual support to manage health needs. These systems function out of necessity and experience. Despite limitations, resilience is a defining trait. People adapt to conditions rather than resist them. Solutions are practical and locally informed. This adaptability allows communities to function in environments that appear difficult from the outside. The camera remains observational, focusing on routine rather than events. Faces are shown without commentary. Work is shown without explanation. These visuals allow the viewer to draw conclusions based on what is seen rather than what is stated. Time becomes an important element. Days unfold slowly. There is less urgency, but not less purpose. Tasks are completed when conditions allow. Schedules are flexible, shaped by weather, resources, and community needs. These moments reveal a Brazil that is lived rather than visited, not designed for outsiders, but for those who belong to the place. This perspective challenges simplified narratives and highlights the complexity of everyday life. As movement continues, these human details accumulate. Each interaction adds context to the landscapes already shown. Geography and culture are no longer separate. They are clearly connected. The journey does not seek to summarize or define Brazil. It observes how people live within it, how they respond to its challenges, and how they maintain identity across distance and diversity. As the route moves forward, environments will change again. New regions will bring different routines, sounds, and faces. What remains constant is the connection between people and place, and the way daily life reflects the land itself. As the journey comes to an end, the distance covered is not measured only in kilometers, but in perspective. Brazil is not defined by a single landscape, city, or experience. What has been shown is a country shaped by scale, contrast, and constant movement, where geography influences daily life, and people adapt to their surroundings in practical ways. From dense urban centers to remote river communities, each environment operates according to its own rhythm. Cities move quickly and absorb change, while rural regions follow patterns set by land, water, and weather. These differences are not separate. They exist within the same country, connected by roads, rivers, and shared history. The journey focused on observation rather than spectacle. The goal was not to impress, but to present Brazil as it exists across distances and transitions. High-resolution visuals reveal detail, but the emphasis remains on continuity, routine, and scale, rather than highlights. Brazil's size makes it impossible to fully understand in a single film. Every region not shown carries its own identity and challenges. What appears here represents only a small portion of a much larger whole. The intention is not to define Brazil, but to offer a grounded view shaped by what is encountered. The people seen along the way represent everyday life rather than exception. Work, family, and adaptation appear in different forms across regions. These routines are repeated daily in countless places, forming the structure that holds the country together. Landscapes change constantly, but the relationship between people and environment remains consistent. Rivers continue to serve as roots and resources. Fields supply food far beyond their borders. Forests shape climate, livelihoods, and responsibility. These connections are part of daily life rather than abstract ideas. Infrastructure and development reveal uneven progress. Some areas grow quickly, others slowly. Roads, buildings, and access to services reflect historical decisions and geographic limitations. These patterns influence opportunity and mobility in ways that are visible across the country. The journey avoided focusing on famous landmarks. Instead, it moved through spaces between destinations. Where much of Brazil exists, these areas are rarely highlighted, yet they define how people live, travel, and connect. Brazil does not offer a single narrative. Modernity and tradition, speed and patience, abundance and limitation exist at the same time. Understanding this requires attention rather than assumption, and presence rather than expectation. As the journey slows, movement continues beyond the frame. Roads stretch forward, rivers follow their course, and daily life carries on according to local rhythms. What has been shown is only a moment within a much longer continuum